If someone asked me, is home where the heart is? I'd probably laugh under my breath and say, depends whose heart you're talking about. My name's Isabel, and I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a neat little suburb outside of Denver, Colorado, in a white brick house with a front yard that looked perfect from the outside. Flowers blooming, a bright blue door, the kind of place you'd imagine kids laughing on the porch. Inside, though, I was just background noise. I had an older brother, Liam, 8 years older, the certified star of our family. Before I even learned to spell my name, Liam had already won citywide math competitions and made the local paper twice. He was the trophy child, and me? I was an extra. Mom used to tell our neighbors while holding me on her hip, "Oh, Isabel? She was a surprise. Liam was more than enough." She'd laugh like it was a funny little joke. But it wasn't a joke to me. It was a script, and I knew my role, unseen, unheard, unimportant. Dad was a civil engineer, always exhausted from long days designing things he never talked about at home. Mom taught 3rd grade and carried her exhaustion like a badge of honor. Neither had much left over for a second child they hadn't exactly planned on. By the time I turned 6, the pattern was set. Every morning, Dad would jingle his keys and mumble, "Take care of her, Mom," as he rushed out the door, passing me off to my grandparents like I was someone else's responsibility. Their house was only 15 minutes away, but it felt like stepping into a whole different life. The smell of cinnamon rolls, the creaky floors, my grandma's soft humming. It was the only place that felt remotely like home. My grandfather, a retired science teacher, loved puzzles and believed every problem had a solution. "Remember, Izzy," he used to say, ruffling my hair, "truth isn't what people say, it's what you see." At their old kitchen table, he taught me how to solve Sudoku and crosswords before I even hit 2nd grade. Grandma corrected my spelling in cheerful purple ink and said, "Sweetheart, knowledge is armor. Build it strong." Meanwhile, back at my parents' place, I was the ghost child. If I missed dinner because my school club ran late, no one saved me a plate. If I brought home a drawing I was proud of, it ended up shoved in a drawer somewhere, forgotten. But when Liam scored another award, oh, then the house would light up. Posters, banners, parties, you name it. On my birthdays, I got a grocery store cake, the cheap kind with hard frosting flowers. 1 candle, no singing, no questions about my wish. Liam got backyard parties with rented bouncy castles and DJs. He didn't hate me, he just didn't see me. I remember sitting cross-legged by the TV while he gabbed away with his friends on the couch, laughing like I wasn't even in the room. Once, when I mustered up all my courage and tried to chime in on their conversation, he just muttered, "Yeah, whatever," and turned his back to me. Message received. I kept hoping, praying, really, that when Liam left for college, things would shift. That maybe, finally, I could step into the light. Wrong. When he left for Stanford at 18, Mom cried like someone had died. Dad kept saying, "That boy's gonna change the world." Me? I was handed a list of chores, bigger than ever. The same day Liam's Uber pulled away from the driveway, Mom called out from the living room, "Izzy, clean the kitchen and vacuum the stairs before bed, okay? I'm exhausted." That night, standing over a sink full of greasy dishes, hands pruny from the hot water, I realized something. This wasn't going to change. Every day after school, before I could touch my homework, I'd find a sticky note slapped to the fridge. Vacuum the living room, fold the laundry, mop the kitchen, prep dinner. And if I forgot even one, "You're living here, aren't you?" Mom would snap. Liam always knew how to pull his weight. The comparison never stopped. I became an expert at everything around the house. I could roast a chicken, unclog a drain, and patch drywall before most kids my age even knew how to boil pasta. Once during finals week, I asked if I could skip dinner prep to study for my algebra exam. Mom just shrugged and said, "Wow, so grades matter more to you than family now?" I didn't answer. I just turned back to chopping onions, the sting in my eyes having nothing to do with the fumes. By 15, I barely saw my parents except when they needed something cleaned or fixed. My weekends weren't spent at the movies or the mall. They were spent organizing closets or bleaching bathroom tiles. When I asked Dad if I could join the school's academic decathlon team, he said without looking up from his newspaper, "Do whatever you want. Just make sure the chores get done first." I started studying late at night when the house finally went quiet. my desk lamp the only thing glowing in the dark, and when Mom barged into my room at midnight to yell, "Turn that light off! We can't afford the electric bill skyrocketing because you're playing college student." I just bit my lip and nodded. But the thing is, I was playing college student, and I intended to win. Grandma and Grandpa kept calling every Sunday like clockwork, even when they got frail. "How's my little genius?" Grandpa would tease. Grandma always ended the call with, "You're worth the world, Izzy." Never forget that. I clung to their words like a lifeline. One night, after finishing a brutal round of chores and studying until 2 a.m., I dug an old shoebox out from under my bed. Inside were every letter and birthday card my grandparents had ever given me. One card from my 9th birthday had a line that hit different: "You're a spark, darling. Just wait till you light up the world." I held that card close, heart thudding in the darkness. No one had ever called me bright before. No one had ever even acted like they were waiting for me to do anything great. And that's when I made a promise to myself. Quiet but firm. I wasn't going to live in this house forever. I wasn't going to spend my life waiting to be noticed by people too blind to see me. I was going to build my own light, no matter what it cost me. By the time I turned 17, the sticky notes on the fridge had gotten even longer, and my tolerance for being invisible, way shorter. I knew I had two options: stay stuck, slowly withering away like the plants Mom forgot to water, or fight like hell to get out. So every night after the chores were done and the house settled into its mindless TV drone, I sat at the old computer in the hallway, the one that whirred louder than a hairdryer, and scoured the internet for scholarships. I wasn't just looking, I was hunting. Essay contests, community service grants, niche awards for first-generation college students. Even though technically Liam had gone first, but somehow he didn't count in my mind, because he had an entire cheerleading squad behind him. I didn't tell my parents. They barely noticed anything unless it directly benefited them. Meanwhile, Grandma and Grandpa were still cheering me on in their quiet, steadfast way. Every Sunday, Grandpa would end the call with, "Remember, sweetheart, opportunities are like doorways. You have to walk through them yourself." I believed him. I had to. Senior year was a blur of late nights, AP classes, and writing more scholarship essays than I could count. Some of them I wrote in the dark on my bed with a dying flashlight, because if my parents caught me wasting electricity again, they threatened to take my bedroom door off its hinges. Yeah, they were those kinds of parents. I remember one night, I was so tired I fell asleep with my laptop still on my chest. When I woke up the next morning, there was a sticky note on the fridge, dishes still in sink, no breakfast until done, signed with a little smiley face. Nice, right? Real Norman Rockwell family material. But none of that mattered anymore, because a few weeks later, on a rainy Wednesday morning, 3 fat envelopes landed in our mailbox. The kind of envelopes you don't just get unless there's something good inside. I clutched them to my chest like they were secret treasure and ran up to my room before anyone could see. Inside those envelopes were 3 acceptance letters. 3 colleges saying the words I had waited my entire life to hear. "Congratulations, Isabel." I sat on my bed, heart pounding, staring at them in disbelief. It was happening. I was getting out. That night at dinner, I nervously set the letters on the table between us. I didn't even expect balloons or confetti. I just wanted a nod, a smile, something. Mom barely glanced at them before shoving another forkful of casserole into her mouth. Dad didn't even look up from the TV. When I finally spoke, voice shaking, and asked about helping with tuition, Mom let out a long, tired sigh, like I had asked her to build a rocket ship from scratch. "Isabel," she said, her fork clinking against the plate, "we used up the college fund on Liam's grad school and wedding. You'll just have to figure it out. Like I'd asked for something silly. Like it wasn't my entire future hanging in the balance. I stared at them, feeling this strange, hollow ache in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. Confirmation that I had been right all along. I was never really part of this family. Just a piece of furniture they occasionally dusted off when it was convenient. I nodded slowly, stood up, and cleared my plate. They didn't even notice when I left the room. That night, as rain tapped against my window, I called my grandparents. Grandma picked up, her voice instantly warm. "What's wrong, Izzy girl?" she asked. I couldn't hold it in. I told her everything, the letters, the rejection. The casual way my parents had dismissed my entire future like it was a leftover chore list. On the other end of the line, there was a long, deep pause. Then Grandpa's voice came through, firm but soft. "We've been waiting for this day," he said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" He chuckled lightly, the sound raspy with age but still strong. "The day you needed us to open the door for you." The next morning, they invited me over. And when I arrived, they handed me a thick folder, documents, bank statements, a letter they had written years ago but had kept tucked away. They had been quietly saving for me since the day I was born. Not for a car, not for some emergency medical bill, but for the day I decided to choose myself. I sat at their kitchen table, fighting back tears as Grandma poured me a cup of tea like it was just any other Tuesday. "You were never alone, Izzy," she said, patting my hand. "We saw you. We always saw you." That day changed everything. 3 weeks later, I packed my things into 2 battered suitcases and moved out of my parents' house without a single argument. I expected a fight. I expected them to ask me to stay. They didn't. Dad didn't even pause his game show marathon to say goodbye. Mom just said, "Do whatever you think is best." And you know what? For once, I agreed with her. When I stepped onto the campus of the University of Washington that fall, it felt like breathing clean air for the first time. Everything around me buzzed with energy, students laughing, people carrying armfuls of books, the smell of coffee in the crisp September air. I could barely believe I was part of it. No longer the extra, no longer the afterthought. I was Isabel Bennett, finance major, class of 2026. I promised myself one thing: I would never let anyone make me feel invisible again. And that fire, the quiet, stubborn kind of fire, would carry me a lot farther than anyone back home could ever imagine. But little did I know, my real story hadn't even started yet. The past wasn't finished with me, not even close. Starting college was like stepping into a new universe, one where nobody knew my history, where no one cared about Liam's achievements, or how many chores I could cram into an afternoon. For the first time, I wasn't the extra, I was just Isabel, and that was enough. At first, I felt like a fraud. Everyone around me seemed so polished, so ready. Kids who'd gone to private schools, who had parents visiting with homemade care packages and university sweaters. Me? I showed up with 2 suitcases, a refurbished laptop, and a heart patched together with duct tape and stubbornness. I worked harder than I ever thought possible. While others partied on Fridays, I was in the library, poring over economics textbooks and case studies. I said yes to every opportunity: investment clubs, finance workshops, summer internships, even when my hands shook before public speaking assignments. Even when I sat in seminar rooms feeling like the dumbest person there, I pushed through. One thing I knew how to do better than anyone was endure. By my sophomore year, things started to shift. Professors remembered my name. One even recommended me for a prestigious mentorship program, something usually reserved for the top 5%. My mentor, Miss S. Carver, was a retired Wall Street analyst, sharp, no nonsense, and intimidating as hell. During our first meeting, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You have 2 options, Isabel: blend into the background or carve your own seat at the table. Which one are you aiming for?" I didn't even hesitate. "Carve it," I said. She smiled, just barely, and said, "Good. Then act like it." And I did. That year, I landed a summer internship at a boutique investment firm in downtown Seattle. The pay was terrible, but the experience? Gold. I spent nights analyzing market trends, building client portfolios, learning everything I could about the industry's sharp edges. No one held my hand. No one softened the blows when I screwed up. But weirdly, it didn't scare me. It felt honest. I preferred brutal honesty to silent disappointment any day. By junior year, I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I even got invited to present at an industry conference in New York, the first undergrad my program had ever sent. I bought a thrift store blazer, stitched up the loose button myself, and stood in front of a room full of suits and skeptical eyes. My voice only shook once. Afterward, an executive from a major firm shook my hand and said, "Smart, clear, direct. We need more of that in this industry." I almost cried right there, but I held it together. Because by then, I knew I didn't need their approval. I had built something better: self-respect. Meanwhile, back home, silence. No calls, no texts. Liam got married in a fancy vineyard ceremony that I wasn't invited to. Found out through a cousin's Instagram post. Classic. I wish I could say it didn't hurt, but it did. Just not in the way it used to. It wasn't a dagger anymore. More like a dull ache. Like touching a bruise you forgot was there. I stayed focused. Grandma and Grandpa still called every Sunday. Grandma would ask if I was eating enough, if I was warm enough, if I was sleeping enough. They never asked for more. Never demanded updates about grades or internships or accolades. They just loved me for breathing, for trying. That was enough. Always. Then, one gray morning in April, a call came that cracked my world open. It was a nurse from St. Jude's Hospital. My grandfather had suffered a massive stroke. My heart dropped to my feet. I don't remember the flight home. I barely remember the Uber ride from the airport to the hospital. When I got there, it was too late. He was already gone. Grandma sat in the corner of the hospital room, so small and fragile it made my chest ache. She didn't cry. She just held onto his flannel shirt, twisting it in her lap like she was trying to weave him back into existence. I kneeled down beside her. She looked at me with glassy, lost eyes and whispered, "He asked about you." Right before he closed his eyes, he said, "Is Izzy still chasing the stars?" I couldn't hold it in then. I broke down, head in my hands, the grief ripping through me like a hurricane. The man who taught me to solve for X when I was still losing baby teeth, the man who made me believe I was worth loving, was gone. The funeral was small, just family friends, a few old neighbors, and me. Mom and Dad showed up, standing stiffly at the back like they were attending some obligatory work function. Liam didn't come. Too busy building his brand, according to Mom. Typical. Afterward, back at my grandparents' house, everything looked frozen in time. The flowered curtains. The old bookshelf crammed with crossword puzzle books. The tea kettle still sitting on the stove. Grandma handed me a thick envelope. Her hands trembled as she said, "This is yours." Grandpa made sure of it. Inside was the deed to the house on Sycamore Lane where I had learned to be brave, and a letter. In Grandpa's crooked handwriting it said, "Home isn't where you're born, sweetheart. It's where you're seen. This is your place now." I pressed the letter to my heart and closed my eyes. I wasn't just a footnote anymore. I wasn't an extra. I was the main character now. And I had work to do. The house on Sycamore Lane became my sanctuary. It wasn't fancy. The paint on the porch was peeling. The kitchen tiles were cracked. The wallpaper in the upstairs hallway was yellowed and curling at the edges. But it was mine. Every square foot of it whispered, "You belong here." I spent weekends sanding floors, repainting walls, fixing leaky faucets. It was exhausting, but the good kind of tired, the kind that makes you sleep deeply and wake up proud. I didn't tell my parents about inheriting the house. I didn't see the point. I was done chasing their attention, done waiting for them to be the kind of parents they were never built to be. Grandma moved into a small assisted living community nearby. Her idea, not mine. "I want you to live your life, Izzy," she said, smiling with that fierce glint in her eye. "Not stay stuck taking care of an old lady. Go build something." So I did. Between classes, my internship, and fixing up the house, my days were packed. But for the first time in my life, busy didn't mean burdened. It meant building. I graduated that spring with honors. Miss S. Carver hugged me after the ceremony and whispered, "Make them regret underestimating you." Already working on it, I thought. I landed a junior analyst position at a mid-sized investment firm in Seattle. Nothing flashy, no marble lobbies or rooftop cocktail hours, but solid, respectable. I rented out 2 of the bedrooms in the Sycamore Lane house to other young professionals to help cover the mortgage and utilities. For the first time ever, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. But life has a funny way of testing you the moment you think you're safe. It started with a text. "Mom, hey stranger, hope you're well. We should catch up soon, call when you can. Love you." I stared at the screen, suspicious. In my entire life, my mother had never sent a text with "love you" at the end. Not without wanting something. Still, a small, stupid part of me hoped maybe, just maybe, it was genuine. So, I called. "Isabel," she answered, syrupy sweet. "How's our little college graduate? We're so proud." "Our?" I bit back the comment. The conversation was weirdly polite, full of small talk and half-hearted laughs. Then came the real reason for the call. "So your father and I have been thinking," she said, voice carefully casual. "Now that you have that big house all to yourself, maybe you could, let us move in? Just until we get back on our feet." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, back on your feet?" I asked. She sighed dramatically. "Liam's startup didn't exactly pan out. Your father invested some savings into it and, well, things are tight. We had to sell the house." I said nothing. Just let the silence stretch until she filled it with more justifications. "We're family, Isabel. Blood is blood. Surely you have space for your parents. We wouldn't be a burden, just until things stabilize." The irony made my throat tighten. When I needed support, even a sliver of it, they had shrugged me off. Now that they needed me, suddenly blood mattered again. "I'll think about it," I said coolly, because I knew better than to say yes in the moment. The guilt would come later, weaponized and sharpened. I spent the next few days turning the situation over in my mind. Was I a bad daughter if I said no? Would Grandpa think less of me for shutting them out? But then I remembered, this house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the first place I was seen. It was sacred. And if they moved in, it would stop being a sanctuary. It would become a battlefield. Their needs would eclipse mine, just like always. My peace would be the first casualty, so I made a decision. One I knew would sting, but that needed to happen. I invited them to Sycamore Lane for coffee. A neutral setting. No big confrontations. They arrived 30 minutes late, of course. Mom wearing oversized sunglasses like a celebrity avoiding the paparazzi. Dad muttering about traffic even though they lived 15 minutes away. I had set out coffee and pastries. No grand gestures. No fancy table settings. Just the basics. We sat around the old kitchen table, the one where Grandpa once taught me to balance chemical equations with jelly beans. Mom launched into her pitch immediately. "We've already talked about it, and it just makes sense. We could help around the house, keep you company, make it a real home again." I sipped my coffee slowly, let them talk. And when they finally paused, I looked straight at them and said, "I appreciate the offer, but no." Their faces froze. Mom blinked like she hadn't heard me right. Dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You're seriously going to turn away your own parents?" Mom asked, her voice trembling. Not from sadness, but from rage disguised as hurt. "I'm not turning you away," I said calmly. "I'm protecting the life I built, the one you didn't believe in." They sputtered, tried to guilt-trip me. Dad said something about how family sticks together. Mom said, "We made sacrifices for you." I almost laughed. Sacrifices? Since when? But I stayed calm. "You made choices," I said, "choices that didn't include me. And now I'm making mine." The kitchen was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking above the stove. Finally, Mom stood up, slinging her purse over her shoulder with a sharp yank. "We always knew you'd end up selfish." I didn't rise to the bait. I just stood too, walked them to the door and said very gently, "Thank you for confirming I made the right choice." And then I closed the door behind them, softly. No slam, no screaming, just finality. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and breathed out all the tension I'd been carrying for years. For the first time, I wasn't shaking after a confrontation. For the first time, I didn't doubt myself. For the first time, I had chosen me. I didn't hear from them for weeks. No texts. No calls. Just silence. I thought it would hurt, but all I felt was relief. I sat on the back porch one night, wrapped in an old quilt, watching the stars sprinkle the dark sky, and I realized sometimes the loudest kind of freedom is silence, the kind you choose. Weeks turned into months, and for a while life was good. I painted the front door a deep navy blue, planted a garden out back, tomatoes, basil, sunflowers stretching toward the sky. There was peace in the routine. Coffee at sunrise, work at the firm. Evenings with a book on the porch, swing Grandpa built decades ago. The silence from my parents wasn't just peaceful anymore. It was healing. I told myself they had moved on, found somewhere else to land. I allowed myself to believe that chapter was closed. I should have known better. It happened on a Saturday. Warm, sunny, the kind of day that practically begged you to leave your worries behind. I was kneeling in the dirt, hands covered in soil, when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. At first I thought it was one of my tenants. But when I looked up, it was Liam. I almost didn't recognize him. Same square jaw and smug grin, but the polish was gone. The tailored suits replaced with a wrinkled button-down and scuffed shoes. Behind him, a moving truck idled. Mom stood by the passenger door, arms crossed, mouth pressed into a thin, sour line. Dad leaned against the truck like he was king of the hill. And right then, I knew they weren't asking anymore. They were moving in. Or trying to. I stood slowly, brushing dirt off my jeans. Liam sauntered over like he owned the place. "Hey, Izzy," he said, flashing a smile that used to melt our parents like butter. "You didn't answer Mom's texts. We figured it's easier this way. Family sticking together, you know." He gestured toward the truck like it was some grand gift. I stared at him, at all of them. And something in me, something I didn't even realize was still raw, snapped. "No," I said. Liam laughed. "Come on, you have the space. You're doing great, right? Let the family benefit a little." Benefit. Like I was some charity project, like all the years I spent as their unpaid maid, their afterthought, their ghost, didn't even exist. I didn't raise my voice, didn't scream, didn't cry. I just said it again. "No, you are not moving in here." Mom stormed over, high heels stabbing into the driveway gravel. "This house belongs to this family," she snapped. "Your grandparents meant it for all of us." I blinked slowly. "Cool, calm. The deed has my name on it," I said. "And Grandpa left me a letter. Want me to read it to you?" I could see her physically recoil. Liam shifted uncomfortably. Dad crossed his arms tighter. I stepped forward, voice steady. "You didn't want me when I needed you. You didn't see me when I begged for it. You don't get to claim me now." Mom's face twisted into something ugly. "You owe us," she hissed. Dad nodded grimly behind her. "You wouldn't be here without us." And there it was, the real truth. Not love, not guilt, just control. Always control. I smiled, a slow, almost pitying thing. "You're right," I said. "I wouldn't be here without you." Their faces lit up, hopeful, until I finished the sentence. I wouldn't be this strong, this independent, this unwilling to be used. Thank you for that lesson. I turned, walked into the house and shut the door behind me, locked it. Deadbolt and chain. They pounded on the door for a while. I made tea. They shouted through the windows. I watered my sunflowers. Eventually, the moving truck pulled away. No apology, no goodbye, just tire marks in the gravel. And once again, silence settled over the house like a blessing. For a few days, I thought that was the end of it. But no. One evening, I got an email from a lawyer. My parents were contesting the will, claiming undue influence, saying my grandparents clearly meant the house to be a family asset. It would have been laughable if it hadn't hurt so much. They weren't just trying to steal my house. They were trying to erase the one piece of love and recognition I had ever been given. I hired my own attorney, a quiet woman named Miss Rivera, who spoke softly but wielded the law like a battle axe. She reviewed the will, the letter, the property records. After 2 meetings, she sat back, laced her fingers together and said, "They don't have a case. Not even close. If anything, this is harassment." I nodded, numb, tired in a way that sleep wouldn't fix. "I don't want to fight forever," I said. "I just want them to leave me alone." She gave me a small, sad smile. "Then we'll end it." And we did. 6 weeks later, the judge threw the case out. Hard. Called it a frivolous, predatory attempt to claim something that clearly wasn't theirs. They had to pay my legal fees. A tiny, poetic cherry on top. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory dance, no champagne, no social media post. Just me sitting on my front porch, sipping tea, watching the sunset over Sycamore Lane, feeling lighter. Not happy exactly, but free. And that was enough. Mom sent one last email. I didn't even open it. I just archived it into a folder labeled past baggage. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I just didn't care. They had no place in the life I was building. They had given up that privilege long ago. And for the first time, I was finally, truly, at peace with it. After the court case ended, the house on Sycamore Lane became something new. It wasn't just a place to sleep or escape anymore. It was mine, entirely. Unquestionably. I stood barefoot on the front porch that night, feeling the warm wood under my feet, breathing in the late summer air. The stars above looked closer somehow, like they were finally within reach. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. Not my parents, not Liam's, not anyone's. I had stopped measuring my worth by who clapped for me and started measuring it by the peace I felt when I closed the door behind me. I spent the next few months rebuilding my life even further, not because I needed to prove anything anymore, but because I wanted to see what I could build when no one was standing in my way. I got promoted at work twice in under a year, started saving aggressively, investing smartly. I even took cooking classes on weekends, just because I wanted to, not because someone expected me to serve them dinner. The old me, the one hunched over a sink full of dishes, the one who stayed up late doing chores while my parents praised my brother, felt like a ghost, a shadow I could acknowledge without living inside anymore. Grandma didn't live to see the second promotion. She passed quietly in her sleep one snowy morning in January, holding a photo of Grandpa in her hands. Losing her hurt more than I can ever explain. The final tether to the part of my childhood that held real, unconditional love was gone. But somehow, even through the grief, I felt something else underneath it: gratitude. She and Grandpa had given me more than love. They had given me roots deep enough to survive storms, wings strong enough to fly when the time came. And now it was my turn to carry that forward. I sold the house on Sycamore Lane a few months later. It wasn't an easy decision. I cried the day I signed the papers, running my hand along the kitchen counter one last time, whispering thank you to the walls that had sheltered me. But I knew it was time. I wasn't that scared little girl anymore, desperate for somewhere to hide. I was a woman building her life by choice, not by circumstance. With the sale money, I bought a modest condo in Seattle, nothing flashy but mine. Big windows, a tiny balcony filled with potted herbs and fairy lights, shelves crammed with books I loved. A space that didn't just hold my body, it reflected my heart. Life didn't magically turn perfect. It never does. Some nights, old wounds still ached like phantom limbs. Memories crept in when I wasn't careful. My mother's cold dismissals, my father's absent gaze, Liam's easy indifference. But they didn't define me anymore. They were chapters I had finished reading. Not chains wrapped around my ankles. Sometimes I got emails from my parents. Apologies wrapped in blame. Backhanded comments masked as concern. I didn't answer. I didn't rage or explain or beg them to see me differently. I just let the silence stand. Sometimes silence is the most powerful boundary there is. Instead, I poured my energy into better things. I started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped first-generation college students apply for scholarships. Kids who, like me, weren't born with a safety net. I watched their faces light up when acceptance letters arrived. I saw pieces of my old self in them, terrified, determined, wildly brilliant despite everything. It felt like closing a circle, a way of honoring the love my grandparents had poured into me, a way of saying, "I see you," the words I'd waited my whole childhood to hear. One rainy Thursday afternoon, as I sipped coffee at my desk and worked on a budget proposal for the nonprofit, my phone buzzed. A reminder I had set months ago. Celebrate yourself today. You made it. I smiled. A real, full smile. Not because everything was easy, not because every dream had come true, but because for the first time, maybe ever, I was proud of who I was without needing anyone else to tell me I should be. If you're wondering whether I ever regretted cutting ties with my family, the answer is simple. No. Protecting your peace isn't cruel. It's survival. Loving yourself enough to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they share your blood, isn't selfish. It's necessary. Family isn't the people who tell the world they love you. It's the people who show you every day, in small, steady ways, that you matter. And sometimes, if no one else steps up, you become that family for yourself. I look around my little condo now, at the photos of friends who became sisters and mentors who became second parents, at the tiny basil plant stubbornly reaching toward the kitchen window, at the neat rows of scholarship applications stacked on my desk, waiting to be reviewed. And I realize I didn't just survive, I rebuilt. Stronger, softer, wiser. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for building boundaries. You are not wrong for demanding the love and respect you deserve. No matter who tries to convince you otherwise, the family you're born into isn't always your forever family. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from the house that never felt like home and build one where you never have to earn your right to be there. Thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen or unchosen, just know you were never the problem. You were never too much or too little. You were always enough. You still are. And your story isn't over. Not even close. It's just getting started. Story 2, quietly on my desk, was the invitation to the yearly reunion of the Thompson family. The large glass of my penthouse windows allowed in morning sunshine, which caused the gold-embossed lettering to gleam against the ivory paper. I believed that 14 years of secrecy were unbreakable, and it was going to fall apart immediately. Not because I wanted to, but because one headline had smudged the mask I'd put so much effort into keeping on. I grabbed my phone and clicked on the email that had revealed everything. Women to watch on Forbes. Olivia Thompson, the rising star of AI and digital art, helped her business reach a valuation of $2.00070 million. 2 days before the reunion, on Monday morning, the piece would go up, and with every word, the quirky artist's sister shell would melt away. Then your brother calls one again. My assistant, Amanda, remarked over the intercom. I sighed, I know. Daniel would call, of course. Since the piece broke to the major outlets, he had been phoning constantly. Still reclined in my chair, my gaze fixed on the skyline of Chicago, I pressed the accept button. What on earth is going on, Olivia? Daniel skipped the politeness and snapped. I was just asked by Bloomberg what it's like to have a sister who is a millionaire, but I was unaware of her existence. Would you mind explaining? I suppressed a grin. On Monday, you'll find out. Similar to everyone else. Do you mean me? He was almost yelling. Your parents worry about you every day. Everyone believes you are impoverished, making ends meet while borrowing money. They believed you had missed your opportunity, made all the incorrect decisions. Concerned, I chuckled quietly. You refer to the critique as sarcasm. The talks about squandering my future anxiety. They just have your best interests in mind, you know. Daniel, no. They wish for me to resemble you, obtain an MBA, work for your father's business, lead a manageable, safe existence. Across the line, there was silence. The golden boy, Daniel, the successor, the living personification of expectations. At last, he inquired in a low voice, For what duration have you been concealing this? I saw my private aircraft touch down on the building across the street as I stood and made my way to the window. Do you recall when I moved into that dilapidated West Side studio? When did you begin creating digital art? Yes. It was 14 years ago. That's right. Everyone believed that I was squandering my Stanford economics degree in pursuit of fantasies. However, nobody was aware that I had already sold my first collection, made $30,000. What? Daniel suffocated. I made $120,000 6 months later when I sold a number of AI-generated pieces. In the next year, $900,000. And I recently reached my first million while Dad was telling the family over Christmas dinner that I was obstinately unemployed. Despite Daniel's silence, I could practically hear his mind working. However, you continued to collect rent from Mom and Dad. For over 10 years, you drove the dilapidated Civic. I didn't accept payment. I made an investment proposition to them. They said no. I made the decision to live that way. I didn't have to. The easiest method to keep the family at bay was to be quiet. A helicopter. Daniel's voice broke. I have 3, and my business is worth about $2.7 billion right now. However, it's closer to $3.50 when the support platforms are taken into account. Daniel took a deep breath, as if he was having trouble breathing. I reached to stop the phone and said, Now, if you'll pardon me, I need to get ready for an executive board meeting. Brother, I'll see you at the reunion. Before he could respond, I hung up and hit the intercom button once more. Is everything prepared for the reunion, Amanda? Indeed, Miss Thompson. The aircraft is prepared. As requested, a Bentley will be used for transportation. As a private venue, the resort has been reserved. Every guest has a printed copy of every document. Fantastic. I took up the invitation and took another look at it. They had viewed me as a burden and a dreamer, but this time I would be the one narrating the tale and ensuring they would never forget it. I can still clearly recall that 23-year-old cold night. Outside my parents' old Vermont cottage, the entire family sat around the dinner table. Although there was a lot of snow falling, The temperature indoors was lower than the outdoors. With his wineglass in hand and a serious attitude, as if he were at a board meeting rather than a family meal, Dad sat at the head of the table. Olivia. His voice was forceful and low. You need to take your future seriously now. Come work for the corporation and quit that computer art foolishness. I still had on a paint-stained sweatshirt that had just come from the studio. I mean it, Father. I just completed a project for a Seattle-based software company. They compensated me only for using the image-generating algorithm I created. As if what I had to say were useless gibberish, he held out his hand to interrupt. Real money is never paid for computer-generated images. It's a trend. A fantasy cannot last a lifetime. Mom sat next to him, sympathy shining in her eyes. She gave me a soft shoulder touch as though to comfort me. Sweetheart, your father only has your best interests in mind. You hold a degree in economics with honors. For it, many would murder. For something so unknown, why squander it? I looked at my 29-year-old sister Madison, the family's rising star, who had just been promoted to deputy CFO at a large company. At the meal, she showed off her new Hermes purse. Madison grinned. Her wine is being watched. All you're afraid of is the actual world. I feel like I'm giving to a charity each time I send you money to pay your electricity bill. Everyone at the table chuckled. Like a horrible soundtrack I never wanted to hear again, their laughing echoed in my ears. I excused myself early that evening and walked upstairs to the old bedroom, which still had my high school trophies pasted on the walls and a fading floral carpeting. I silently gazed over the lines of code I had typed the previous day when I opened my laptop. No one in my family was aware that only 2 weeks prior, a European company had paid me more than $40. To utilize my picture production program in their advertising campaign while I watched the art change with the algorithm. I kept it to myself. Nothing. My dismissal wasn't the first time. I begged my father for $150,000 when I was 26 years old so that I could start an AI-powered art-on-demand website. I had a list of possible customers, a functioning prototype, and a thorough business strategy. After 5 minutes of skimming, he folded it up and put it down. We don't invest in illusions in our company. Return when you're ready to launch an accounting company or coffee shop. Madison simply gave a head shake. I can always hire you. I'll provide you a consistent paycheck. Don't dream any longer. I declined both of them. I started an adventure when I relocated to Austin that same year. My family didn't really think it was real. They referred to me as the artistic misfit, the childish artist, and occasionally the withdrawn letdown of the Thompson household. It was the same at every reunion. They discussed concrete victories, investment funds, real estate, and interest rates. So what are you doing now? I inquired periodically as I sat at the end of the table. Then courteous nods and a brief shift in topic followed. Madison got up at dinner last year, took out a huge package, and gave it to me in front of everyone. Please accept this. I know you detest asking for loans. Consider it a present from your accomplished younger sister. I thanked her, put the envelope in my handbag, and grinned. I left it on the table unopened after the dinner and departed. The black card of my own business, which handles transactions totaling close to $100 million each month, was in my wallet at the time. I wasn't prepared for them to know, and they didn't know either. Every patronizing phrase, each sneer. I recalled everything, every time they handed me money, in the belief that they were being philanthropic. Not to exact retribution, but to create something so strong that they would never be able to accept that they previously considered me a failure. And that day is drawing near. At the beginning of my 27th year, I moved into a rundown loft in East Austin. It was just 400 square feet, with a shoebox-sized bathroom and no central heating. I bathed under a little leaking nozzle every morning and made coffee by boiling water in an electric kettle, but I felt more alive than ever before. I had recently finished a $75,000 contract with a Swedish game firm to supply algorithms that created animated backdrops depending on user moods. But no one in my family knew that when I was eating instant noodles and wearing old sweaters. I still didn't want Olivia Thompson's name to appear on any headline, so a third-party business coded the project under a pseudonym. The digital art collection Echoes of Light, a personal initiative that combined machine learning and visual memory data from thousands of survey respondents, was my first significant achievement. I used a secret exchange to sell the complete collection as unique digital assets. $48,000 was the final cost. I sobbed when I saw that figure appear on my account for the first time. It was the first time the world had acknowledged my goal, not because of the money. My second collection, Synthetic Reverie, came out 6 months later. This time, I worked with a music producer to make each composition a coordinated combination of sound and visuals. Over $220,000 was raised when a painting that could hum the whole collection sold out in less than 12 hours. I didn't improve my standard of living with that money. I employed a group of software developers to create my own platform using it. Lumina Frame is a digital platform that allows artists to employ artificial intelligence, AI, to produce works that reflect their individual styles and feelings. All artwork may be tokenized, exchanged, or shown in custom-designed virtual galleries, and each user would be given their own unique algorithm. I took my time promoting the platform. Before I went public, I wanted it to be flawless. Over the following 2 years, I led a normal life, even one that was below average. I continued to drive the 2008 Civic that I had spent $1,200 in. Leaning to the left is the passenger seat. The driver's side window was stuck, and the radio only picked up 2 stations. However, Madison always mentioned that she had recently upgraded to the newest Tesla Model S, so I continued to drive it to every family get-together. I continued to accept my mother's sad embraces, my father's empathetic looks, and my relatives' kind offerings. If you require lodging, out back we have a guest home. Do you want me to direct you to HR? At my business? A communications assistant is being hired. I thanked them, grinned, and continued to act like the idealistic elder sister who hadn't fully matured. In the meantime, I had set up a business in Delaware to manage finances under a different name. To ensure untraceability, each transaction was divided and sent across 3 separate platforms. The Singaporean venture capital firm that funded the Lumina Frame project was unaware that I was the driving force behind it. They just knew me as L. Vance, the inventor of an AI technology that is currently being utilized by large Asian animation companies. In a Series B fundraising round, the platform was valued at $780 million B, the time I reached 31. However, I kept that information from my family members. I just got a nicer espresso machine and replaced the old curtains in my flat, which was still the same. The explanation was straightforward. I wasn't prepared. When my father told me I was lucky, I wasn't prepared. I didn't want Madison to perceive me as a danger. She preferred to assist rather than her eccentric artist sister. Furthermore, I wasn't prepared to hear my mother express concern that I was withdrawing too much. When the truth came out, I wanted it to be indisputable, no justifications. No excuses, no acting as though I never informed them or that they were unaware. I wanted it to be so genuine and enormous that no one could take it away or distort it. I desired for them to observe. And it was closer than ever to the day when the whole Thompson family would have to confront my true self. The item was prominently displayed on Forbes' site as the sun rose. Olivia Thompson and the quiet rise of a $3.2 billion SI empire was the big headline. The image I selected featured me standing with Peace, the platform's top seller, in the Lumina Frame main gallery, costing $4,500,000. Behind me, my phone started buzzing constantly after 10 minutes. Communications, calls and emails, fulfilling demands, invitations to interviews and offers of partnerships. A flood that never seems to stop. I sipped my espresso while watching the mayhem play out on the 3 monitors on my desk with a composed stare. After 5 years of being muted, the family group chat had burst. Madison, is this genuine, Olivia? Holy shout. Daniel, this paper is a complete waste. There must be some error. Mom, Olivia, I must speak with you. Give me a call now. We must speak alone, Dad. I didn't answer any calls before the reunion, so I placed the phone down. The time had come. They experienced what it was like to be abandoned, as if they had abandoned me. I reclined in my chair and gazed through the glass at the skyline of Chicago. Dancing over the chilly steel buildings is the morning light. Every structure served as a reminder. I had made the correct decision. The doorbell rang. abrasive and demanding. Amanda appeared a little agitated as she entered the office. A woman below is posing as your mother, Miss Thompson. She is unwilling to go. I nodded and let out a sigh. Lift her up. After 10 minutes, my mother and Thompson entered the private elevator as it opened. Her beige Chanel suit was still immaculate and wrinkle-free, and her hair was still done well. But I almost didn't recognize the lady who used to be calm under pressure because of the fear and bewilderment in her eyes. The digital artwork on the far wall caught her attention as she glanced over the penthouse, the black flooring, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the cityscape. One of my works now worth more than $500,000. She stuttered, Olivia. What? What is this? Is this where you call home? I went to pour her a cup of tea at the table. I own it. I own 3 of them in Chicago. Although I almost ever use them, I have 2 more in Vancouver and Manhattan. With her eyes focused on mine, she sank onto the Italian leather chair across from me. You? For all these years, what have you been up to? I assumed you were selling a few paintings to make ends meet. I believed I understood your thoughts. Calm yet razor sharp, I sliced into my voice. While Madison was moving up the financial ladder and Daniel was flipping houses, I know that everyone assumed I was the failed elder sister, wandering about with a laptop and a pipe dream. I served as a warning to the family. Mom cast her gaze downward. I silently drew out a folder from a drawer and set it down in front of her. I presented my dad with this investment suggestion 6 years ago. I requested that he contribute $200,000 to the development of Lumina Frame. No, he responded, called me a needless danger. The current value of such investment would be almost $94 million. She turned the pages with trembling hands. Everything is clearly spelled out, including growth charts, finance agreements, and strategic client lists. She let out a gasp. Your dad? You were only requesting money, he replied. Why did you conceal everything? How come you didn't tell me? Nobody ever truly wanted to listen, so for once, I looked her in the eye. You keep changing the topic whenever I bring up the project. Each time I said I was engrossed in a daydream, according to Dad. Like she was doing me a favor, Madison gave me money. Daniel gave me a job offer as a junior accountant, as if he were saving me from disaster. The room was so quiet that it pushed against the walls. With tear-streaked eyes, my mother raised her head. You're correct. I didn't pay attention. When I looked, I saw nothing. I gave a soft nod. However, things have changed since then. All of them will be seen by the family. From the adjoining hangar, I could see my private plane as I went out onto the balcony. Glistening in the sunshine, my name was emblazoned in dazzling gold over its surface. Less than 48 hours remained until the reunion, and I would not be seated at the end of the table in silence this time. Even if I were the one entering, nobody could turn away. The morning of the reunification of the Thompson family, as though the cosmos itself were preparing for a reckoning that no one would ever forget, the sky was a perfect blue. Just weeks after finalizing my first billion-dollar sale, I stood on the main deck of the 3-story yacht Viera, which was tied off Montclair Island, the private island I had bought about a year prior. 4 helicopters landed at the landing strip in the distance, one after the other, and O was given a huge greeting. The white stone of Thompson Retreat gleamed in the tropical sunlight. Massive LED panels on each side of each pad played a loop of digital pieces I had made, such as Synthetic Reverie, The Memory Orchard, and Code of Solace, the same pieces my father waved away when I suggested we collaborate on an investment. Wading up the marble walk that led to the central villa property, I tightened the collar of my white silk shirt while keeping my gaze on the line of Rolls-Royce Phantoms. According to the itinerary, each automobile had been specifically designated to drive family members from the airport to the waterfront and then aboard the boat or helicopter. My father, Richard Thompson, emerged when the door opened after the first helicopter touched down. His eyes flickered slightly alongside him, yet he was still as stately as ever. Anne, my mother, had a taut face, as though she was forcing herself to think that none of this was possible. Wearing designer labels from head to toe, Madison and her husband Carter were transported in the second helicopter. Madison took a step back, looked around her face, and tensed up when her eyes found the sign with my name on it. It never occurred to her that the reunion she had proposed would take place at a resort in Scottsdale, would now take place on an island owned by the sister she used to refer to as a family duty. I got off the deck of the yacht. I have my hands in my pockets. Though subtle, my smiles are as sharp as a blade. "Hello, everybody," I said. I could easily hear my voice in the wide air. "I hope you had a comfortable journey." Trying to maintain a level voice, my father was the first to speak. "Olivia, everything. Was all of this really required?" With my lips curling, I cocked my head. "It depends on your definition of required, father. I thought it was time for a change of pace after 10 years of reunions in unmemorable hotels." "Different?" Madison repeated, eyes wide as she peered at the glass-covered villas set between rows of palms. "You own an island?" "Technically, it's a complex, but sure, the island is center." I grinned. "Everyone ready for the reunion?" No one answered. I made a motion, and the fleet of phantoms shot ahead at once, transporting each group to their individual villas in accordance with a plan I had personally created. The name of each passenger was displayed on a shining acrylic plaque in each room. There was also a personalized welcome packet inside. I went with the flow. Dappled shadows are created on the stone by sunlight filtered through the leaves. We arrived at the main hall. Standing in a line, uniformed employees held cold fruit mocktails that were appropriate for all age groups and adapted to health regulations. At 7 o'clock, dinner will be served. I looked at the family. You are free to relax or check out the East Wing display in the meanwhile. If you look closely, you can see that each section contains a tiny LED display that shows the current value of each piece of art in real time. It also features a few new works that I have never exhibited previously. My dad narrowed his eyes like a museum exhibit, blockchain, networked, and by invitation, only not exactly like a museum. Madison turned to face Carter and said something I couldn't hear, but I could see the mix of amazement, mistrust, and envy on her face. A part of her was trying to figure out how the crazy elder sister she used to feel sorry for had created an entire kingdom right in front of them. For an instant, I remained motionless as I saw them dispersing across the retreat. They all had confused expressions, overcome by the opulence all around them. And when they gathered around the huge dining table under the crystal dome tonight, I was just getting started. I would provide them with more than just art and data. This time, I wouldn't be sitting inconspicuously at the far end of the table or chatting gently. Instead, I would show them exactly what they had been missing over the previous decade. They would have to confront the reality, and I would be in the middle. At one point, they were too preoccupied with pitying me to see that I had established an empire. The large table, covered in white silk, was bathed in warm golden light. Inside a hall with glass panels that looks out into the starry night sky, an ivory envelope and a name card were placed on each seat. Like small stars, the light was captured by crystal glasses. Dressed in sleek black and white, the personnel waited calmly on each side, waiting for orders. Still shaky on their feet, the Thompsons stumbled in. Nobody said anything. I knew they were still in shock, since each had already examined the envelope that had been put in their individual suite earlier. I had planned something special for each envelope. Madison was shown a graphic that contrasted my daily passive income from investments with her highly praised six-figure salary. Daniel received a report describing how his real estate company had previously turned down a partnership offer from Lumina, framed from 4 years ago, and how that agreement would now treble their yearly income if it were approved. A portfolio with the heading, "The Missed Investment, $200,000 stow, $96 million in italics," was presented to my father, Richard. After everyone had seated themselves, I stood up. Slowly, my gaze swept across each face, tense, unsure, and wary. Some did not look at each other. Madison fussed about her serviette. In an attempt to look calm, my mother sat up straighter than normal. I appreciate everyone's presence tonight. Before supper, I started, in a quiet but forceful voice, "I want to share something with you." I hit a button on a little remote control that was tucked away in my pocket. A title appeared as the lights faded the glass wall behind the table and changed into a transparent screen. Opportunities Lost and the Forgotten Journey. In the first picture, I was 24 years old, sitting in a small apartment with an outdated laptop resting on my lap. The kid who never grew up is a 2013 text read. $48,000 was sold in the first collection. I moved gently across the table while keeping my eyes on the television. The next slide shows me giving the 2016 Lumina frame pitch while positioned at a whiteboard. Here's a quote from my dad. "Do you believe that consumers will pay for computer-generated images? It's not art, it's an illusion." The growth chart followed. Each milestone was accompanied by a well-known comment. Madison, 2018. Inspiration and quick noodles aren't sustainable. Daniel, 2020. When individuals are investing in real estate, who needs pictures? 2022. Why don't you teach art the way you loved painting, Mom? It is more steady. The lights came back on. At the head of the table, I remained still. Concrete is lighter than the air. What made you conceal it? With the quiet voice, my father asked. Why not speak up? I was staring at him the entire time, nor bitter, nor furious. Just be clear. As nobody was paying attention, I made an effort. Each time I raised my voice, you shifted the topic. I received a smirk every time I made a suggestion. Each time I discussed or digital art or anything else that didn't fit your idea of success, I was thrown out. I looked over at Madison. Remember when you told me to simply take the envelope that you pushed at me in front of the entire family? I understand you. Have you ever considered the possibility that I didn't require assistance? Simply show respect. Madison remained silent, her fingers clenched around her glass as she bent her head. This isn't to boast, I said, but to show everyone that success doesn't always look like what you're used to. Silence doesn't necessarily imply failure, and you don't have to follow the road your family has chosen to achieve success. My mother's voice was no more than a whisper when she blinked. We were mistaken. I was mistaken. I was unaware of your progress. I gave a soft grin. You don't have to apologize to me. All I need is for you to see me. Can you actually see me? Not the person you wanted me to be. I held out my glass. 100 tiny stars are formed by the refraction of light. I said, let's eat now. However, nobody needs to act like someone they're not this time. Being judged doesn't have to make someone shrink. The whole family is seated here. And I'm Olivia Thompson, the top of the table now, after earlier being ignored. There was a long period of silence. Daniel then lifted his glass carefully in Olivia's direction. And to the most important lesson you just taught us all, he continued. They raised their glasses in the wine's golden light, one by one. For the first time in years, I saw anything. Genuine acknowledgement. Once everyone had gone back to their rooms after supper, I remained behind, seated on a plush leather armchair in the glass atrium. I'm holding a cup of herbal tea. Outside, the moonlight stretched like a silver ribbon across the ocean as the sea moved with gentle waves. After a day of reckoning, I sat there for a while, relishing the first moment of peace. I was not labeled delusional. No more pity glances. No more remarks that viewed me as a problem that needed to be resolved. I was not rejected or given an explanation for the first time in a decade. Soft footsteps resounded. It was Richard, my father, who had lost his tie and was still dressed in the white shirt he had worn to dinner. Before he spoke, he sat in the chair opposite from me and silently observed me for a while. None of us ever could have predicted what you did, and I'm proud and embarrassed of that. I didn't answer. To listen, I just cocked my head. I always believed that stability was the aim, and that being creative should be a pastime rather than a job. However, it is now evident who was actually looking in the incorrect place. I put down my tea. Your decision to take the safe route for yourself wasn't incorrect. You were mistaken to believe that it was the only way for everyone. He nodded while his eyes lingered on the wall's code of comfort and calm. Me and your mom, we were terrified since we didn't understand the language you used to communicate. And people deny when they're scared. He took a folded piece of paper out of his pocket and laid it on the table. Though I thought it should come straight from me, I was going to put this in your room. I took it open. There was no mistaking his penmanship. Olivia, I wouldn't force you to pick between your dream and your family if I could go back in time. I lost the opportunity to contribute to a project, but more importantly, I lost the opportunity to accompany you on that trip. I apologize for not listening to you when you needed it most, not simply for questioning you. You're more than just a success. A new planet has been built by you. And I'm honored to be Olivia Thompson's father for the first time. I held the letter in my hands and gently folded it. I almost convinced myself that this moment would never arrive since I had been waiting for it for so long. Oddly enough, though, I didn't feel triumphant or outraged when it happened. I simply felt calm. The following morning, the whole family assembled in the main auditorium to watch me showcase my most recent effort on a plain stage against a black background. Wearing a navy blue jumpsuit, I took a step forward. There was a sense of subdued expectation as the light gently focused. I appreciate everyone sticking. I started. I would want to provide a completely fresh chapter, the next phase in this trip today. I pressed the remote control. The emblem of an Ethereum, a platform for rewriting reality, appeared on the screen behind me. I have spent the last 3 years fostering the Ethereum project. It's more than simply a digital art platform. It's a hybrid environment where safe blockchain, augmented reality, and customized AI meet. A location where anybody may design, own, and reside in their own creative space. A universe unconstrained by a screen, stage, or painting. A little child creating a virtual library of her grandparents' memories, and an architect creating a real-time interactive model of his ideas within a mixed reality setting were among the sample clips I showed. With a valuation of more than $10 billion, this enterprise has concluded its Series C investment round. You are the first to see its full potential today. There was no sound in the room. Daniel was the first to speak. Olivia, if it's okay with you, I'd want to switch some of my personal investments to Ethereum. This is actually valuable, not because you're my sister. Madison stood up slowly. Although I may not fully comprehend all the technical jargon, I am aware of when something is revolutionary and will do my best to promote it. I grinned. I didn't require their atonement. They only needed to verify those statements to me. There was more to them than a check. I went back to the little villa on the island's west side by myself that night. Through the open drapes, a gentle sea air floated. I put a framed copy of my very first NFT sale next to my father's letter. I placed a new frame with the Forbes headline, my picture standing in front of the Lumina frame, and a little line underneath it on the nightstand, which cost $48,000. This was not done to disprove anyone. I took this action in order to uphold my moral convictions. I woke up before dawn the following morning. The wooden floor was covered in golden spots as the soft light from the sea streamed through the large glass windows. The waves outside spoke like the steady breath of a world I had created. It comes from hours of labor, lines of code, and innumerable invisible failures not from fiction. With a steaming cup of coffee in front of me, I put on a light robe and went out onto the patio. The island was beginning to awaken. The aroma of toast filled the air as staff prepared breakfast outside. Below, tables were arranged neatly, with palms swaying in the background. I observed Daniel sitting by himself at a stone table, his iPad eyes fixed intently as though he were studying something profoundly, and Madison strolling with Mom. To me, the real sense of achievement was when everything was at ease. Nor the cheers, nor the long overdue compliments. Not even the startling statistics, but the liberty to live according to your convictions without needing to defend them or seek approval from others. I reflected on the journey I had taken at the beginning, living in a small apartment with just an outdated laptop, adjusting pixel location and coding to fit mood during the restless nights. The times I declined assistance that everyone said I was stupid for declining. When they dubbed me a failure, I had said nothing, but I continued to create during that quiet. I did not establish this empire to exact retribution or to establish a point. It was something I had to make, because I would lose myself if I didn't do it. We all have dreams that the outside world might not comprehend, but from the beginning, nobody owes the world comprehension. In actuality, great achievements frequently start off alone. Nobody is standing by your side when no one is encouraging you, and all the doors appear to be closed. And at that very time, if you continue, if you have the courage to believe in the invisible, if you silently continue to put brick after brick, the world will eventually be forced to see. The breakfast proceeded in a calm setting. People's gaze changed and they started chatting to me. No longer dismissive or guarded. This time, and for the first time, it was true curiosity. Show respect. Daniel wanted to know how Ethereum works. Madison mentioned possible cooperation with the marketing department of her business. Even my hitherto reticent father extended an invitation to attend an international banking meeting next month, where he would serve as the main speaker. I took my time Accepting, I nodded, grinned, and just replied, I'll give it some thought, because I had the freedom to choose for the first time. Rather than hoping to be selected after breakfast, I went to inspect the west part of the island with Amanda, my assistant, and the recently hired CEO of Lumina Frame, where I intended to construct the first digital art center that combined extended reality technology with physical space. Amanda gave me a tablet that displayed how many new people had joined since the project's debut yesterday. Almost 1 million in less than a day. The fact that I knew this wasn't the pinnacle made me happy, not the number. I would go on, and it was only the start of a whole new story. No more hiding. I went back to the auditorium by myself that evening, where I had previously shown the chronology of my achievements. I stood in the empty room and played back an old webcam recording of myself. At the age of 23, my eyes flaming with conviction, showing it to no one. After letting it finish, I turned to face my younger self on the screen. All that girl had was faith. No wealth, no celebrity. Nobody had faith in her. But she persisted. I grinned. Olivia, you succeeded, I muttered. And this is only the first chapter. I walked out into the pitch-black night sky, which was dotted with 1 million brilliant stars. There was an island under my feet, the representation of a dream, once made fun of. The future lay before me, without a well-traveled route. I would only carve one personally, because proving people incorrect isn't the goal of true accomplishment. It's about living your life according to your convictions. Because I followed a road that no one believed in, I was once ridiculed and excluded from all discussions about accomplishment until the very end. But I had created an empire in that quiet. I also no longer require late recognition or applause. I simply need to know that I never gave up and that I had faith in myself. Fanfare does not lead to success. It results from remaining loyal, even if the world ignores you. How do you feel about Olivia's path and her decision to confront her family? Please leave a comment below with your ideas, and remember to follow the channel for more. Encourage family tales like this one.